Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm really excited about having this conversation with you today. We're celebrating this week in Hastings, the 60th anniversary of the Hastings Public Library. And what a fun exercise it's been for me this week, learning a little bit about the history of the library. And I thought, what better way to dig a bit deeper than to get together some of the key players in the history of the library, past and present, and to hear some of your stories and observations, and really excited to dig into a conversation with you today. I'm thinking the best way to start our conversation is just to go around the screen and introduce ourselves and maybe share what your connection is to the library. I'll start first. So my name's Jenny Madden, and I'm currently the Hastings branch library supervisor. And I've been working here since in this position since January of 2019. So just a couple of years. But maybe I'll pass. Val, can I pass it along to you next to introduce yourself?
Yes, you can. Okay, my name's Val Ugle, and I've been working at the Hastings branch since, let me see, August 2010. And yeah, that's it really. I just love it. And there we are.
Great. And you're working,
Okay.
you're the library assistant, I guess.
Yes, I am. Yes, I'm a library assistant. Yes.
Great. And then Shirley, would you like to share what your connection is to the library?
Sure. I started work at the Hastings Library back in November of 1993 as the assistant supervisor, working with Anne. And I guess all told, I was there 25 years. The last 7, I think, of which I was the supervisor. And I retired in December of 2018, although I did do a couple of weeks at the beginning of January 2019 with Jenny.
Yeah.
The library has been a big part of my life, not just working life, but certainly I've been able to indulge my love of books and reading. And I feel myself that I've been very fortunate to have been able to work there so long.
Great. Thank you, Shirley. Anne, would you be willing to share next when you worked at the library?
Well, I'm Anne Sullivan. I think I know you all because, with the exception of Jenny, I've worked with you all for a long time. I honestly am not good with dates, so I can't remember when I started. It was with Joanne down on the Front Street Library, which was a cozy little place, Joanne, wasn't it?
It was.
It was, otherwise, Brianne started as a student volunteer in this library. Very good one at that, and I'm glad you're still with us. Shirley, of course, started as my assistant. I was Joanne's assistant, of course, at one point. And then somewhere later on, Val came in as an assistant as well. So, you know, it's Judy, I've worked with a little more at a distance, not right in this library, but certainly, you know, strong ties.
Great. Thank you, Anne. So Brianne, do you want to go next? So you've got kind of a special connection to the library.
Yes, I feel like it is very special and dear to my heart. So yes, as Anne said, I started volunteering at the library. I was actually 9 years old, and my brother and I started volunteering, and I kind of outlasted him, but my grandmother lived right across the street. So I spent every Friday night there with her, and I'd walk across and volunteer, and I'd come back Saturday morning and volunteer. And I'm fairly confident that between myself and my siblings, we definitely kept the children's circulation up very high. So I would bring tons of bags of books back and forth and would read them to my sister. So yes, I volunteered. Again, I'm like you, Anne, I'm not very good with the dates, but I know I was 9 and I volunteered until I was finally able to be paid at 16. And I worked for 4 summers as the TD Summer Reading Club student as well. And that's where I worked with you a little bit, Judy, in Coburg.
Yes, you did.
At the main office there. And I worked a lot with Anne and Shirley in Hastings, and Val as well before I left. And I think, Joanne, you're the only one that I probably didn't quite work with, but remember fondly as the librarian as well. And yes, and now I work in Campbellford as the children's librarian assistant CEO. So I've definitely had a lot of love for the library and experience of the positions of being a volunteer all the way up to where I am today.
That's
So
great.
it's so nice to see you all.
Oh, thanks, Brianne. Joanne, did you want to go next and introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I started at Librarian in 1982 and was there for 10 years. I took over from Lynn Preston. It's interesting hearing Brianne talking about the library because her mother, Kathy Hornsby, was quite a good, she was a constant patron at the library. I remember the day she came in to say that she was pregnant with twins. And of course, one of those was Brianne. So she was coming into the library even before she was born. And I worked as Anne said, with Anne, and before that, I worked quite a bit with Judy Howard, and we had a lot of fun together, and there was a lot of good memories with the people, and and it was a busy time because we had the move as well to the new library.
That's great. Thank you, Joanne. Now, Judy, I've saved you for last because you now you also have a really interesting connection to the library. Can you introduce yourself and your connection?
Yes, I'm Judy Howard, formerly Judy Jones, and that's where I started in the library, was as Judy Jones, because my mom was the first librarian, Jane Jones, in 1961. So I got to see the kind of the seed be planted and the growth of the library, and for it finally exist. So as a little girl, I'll just say, where would you like me to start? From there? Because as a little girl, my dad happened to be on council in 1960 or whenever. My mom and dad were out for a walk, and my mom she'd come from Vancouver, and she wondered why was this little town that didn't have a library? It just seemed wrong. So she kind of said to Dad, well, how would we do that? And he said, well, I'll take it to the council and see what they think. And it took a little while. I'm not sure, no, being a child, I'm not sure how long it was in the books, but that was a pun, I guess. So Dad got things moving, and it sounds a little bit maybe that Mom got the job because of him, but she applied for the job when it came open, and she got the job. And it was, as a little girl, it was very exciting because the books that I had would probably have been from the $5 to $1, an assorted book of classic children's books or whatever. But we were able to, I was able to help. We would get these big trunks from the traveling library in Toronto, which would be really what we would call discards now. But we would be so excited. They would get sent through the mail, and my mom would pick them up, and we would bring them home and put them on the dining room table to sort through these books, what was going to go into the library, what might not be quite, maybe a little outdated or whatever. But in the 60s, I don't think they worried so much at being out of print or whatever. There may even be some still sitting on the shelf that you just don't want to get rid of, right? So
you kept sorry, Judy. So those books, so they were like discards that came from that's how you started the collection.
Yes, from the Toronto Public Library, they would send these books and there would be lots of, mainly the nonfiction children's books came from the Toronto Public Libraries. And so I don't know how many trunks, I would call them, they were like big metal trunks, and it was like Christmas. My sister and I thought that was the greatest thing. So we would sit at our dining room table, and Mom, I got to do the stamping because I was the youngest, and my sister could type, so she could help do the cards and pockets at home. Of course, this was all my mom's volunteer time. And I think the library, when it opened originally, excuse me, was open 7 hours a week. And there was two afternoons, I think Tuesdays, Fridays, and no Saturdays at that time. But they could only afford, they would have had to pay for a business phone if they had actually
More hours.
7 hours. So 7 hours was what they paid my mom for. So anyway, but the lineups at the, like out the door and out, the first library was at where the Legion Park is now, where the cenotaph is, on the corner of Bridge and Front. So where the Fleming building, I don't know whether any of you remember the Fleming building that was there, because it was a fire there in the 80s. That's all I can say, 80 something. So that was where the original library was.
It was called the Fleming Building.
The Fleming Block. It was that was the yes. And it was like a 3-story building, and it went right over the raceway. And my mom used to say there was a first door room when you walked into the original library was the floor, you could see the water running through, and my mom would say, "Oh, I've got to go and get that." She'd have to put wood in the little there was a little stove there in the main section, and she said she'd always have to make sure that she wore warm socks and stuff, because in the winter it was very, very cold. But you ladies all know that there was one, what would I call it? It's like a big desk. It looks, it's been moved from the original library to where the Chinese restaurant is right now, to in the town office now, which I'm going to call the town office, but where the library president.
Civic Centre.
That looks, it's white with a brown like wood top.
Yeah,
that's been, yeah, that's the original, from the original building on Front and Bridge. And when they moved the library to the storefront, where it was when Joanne and I worked together, and Joanne was the supervisor, or she was the librarian, the head librarian, and I was her assistant at that library from 83 to, I think it was 89. But I got myself into working at head office with Northumberland County as well. And when Joanne and I worked together, the library became part of the county system, which Hastings wasn't. They originally always wanted to be autonomous. They always wanted to stay on their own, but we kind of convinced them, didn't we, Joanne, that it would be better to work together. So we did that. And so I was Joanne's assistant, and also did the children's programming at those times.
Yeah, what a great, interesting connection you have to this place. As
so there's
part of
all more. Yeah, I could talk all day, but you could just tell me to be quiet and I will move on.
No. Now you touched on the idea of the library wanting to be independent, and this is another part of the history that I'm not totally clear on. And as part of our celebrations this week, I've been just really trying to nail down the history. And during the 50th anniversary, Shirley did a lot of work to accumulate a lot of information about the past, and I've been really heavily leaning on all that work that she did. Now I found there was mention of originally the Hastings Library being part of the Lake Ontario Regional Library System. Yes. And there was also talk about it being part of the Northumberland Union Library.
We were never part of the union. We were part of the county. but was 8 other branches that were part of the union. They were smaller branches.
Okay, but
But-
Hastings wasn't.
Right. Do you recall just lately, I don't know how many years it's been since they stopped the Northern and Southern Ontario library part that always ran the program, like teaching and different things that they would come in, and they used to do blocks of large print and various things. But when we first came back, Joanne, you'd remember this maybe, we were part of Lake Ontario Regional, because there was like 7, the province was divided up into 7 different areas that looked after, like we were part of Lake Ontario, someone else was like Saugeen, I don't know, I can't remember all of them. And then there was Northern Ontario, but they moved it in the 90s. I think it was under when
Southern.
funding started to go under Harris, when he changed the things, they ended up just having 2, Northern and Southern Ontario Regional.
So
So
does
they
that,
were,
Joanne, does that ring true to you? So it was, when you started, it was originally part of the Lake Ontario Regional Library System, and then it changed over to the
Yeah,
Northumberland County?
I think we were part of Northumberland Union at that time too, because I remember the librarian down in
Wendy,
where she is, sort of Grafton, when her name was Wendy Brown.
Wendy Brown. She
Yeah.
was, she was the CEO for, or the chief librarian for Northumberland County. But before that, it had been a union, they'd called it union. When several
I thought it was
libraries.
Northumberland. I thought it was Northumberland Union when we were there.
That's
And,
what I found in the notes, that it was, we were part of the Northumberland Union Library, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
'cause
so. And then Wendy went, I think, to Peterborough or somewhere else, and then things changed around. And
In 1986, Hastings became part of it was county by then. We
Yeah.
went to hear someone speak, a provincial fellow that told us about if we became part of the Northumberland County system, that we would be, there would be a $25,000 more into the system because of us joining. So that helped all of the libraries, and we convinced, I think it was Reeve Scudds. Mr. Scudds was the Reeve at the time, and he said, oh, if we can pay less per capita, then we will do that. And we did. So we convinced him that we could all work together and share our resources.
And
So-
Anne and Shirley, when amalgamation, so moving forward from then, when amalgamation took place in Trent Hills in 2001, how soon after did the Trent Hills Public Library come into existence? Do you remember?
Oh, well, Shirley, pardon me. Trent Hills is quite recent. I mean, I remember what Joanna is talking about, Judy is talking about there, but it was mostly in the past for me. But yes, when I started, we had our own, what was it, Judy, 7 libraries
9.
in our group.
9, yeah.
I remember I also did the courier route, so I was carrying books around between each of the libraries there for some time. But Trent Hills didn't come in until after amalgamation. That sort
Yes.
of happened a long time afterwards.
After the county system, sorry, Ann, once the system broke up because of, well, it started out with our Murray Township branch that was kind of on the edge of, they shared a bridge between Hastings Township and Northumberland Township, or Northumberland County, and the Belleville and Trenton and all of those guys. Quinty, it became Quinty West or whatever, but they immediately, they said, okay, we're going to move Murray Township into Hastings County. And then that was one less library. We kind of started to slip off the tree trunk or off the tree branch. We went from 9 branches to 8, and then everybody said, well, I mean, I guess we can pull out if we want to, but there was no, I mean, we were always working well together, but it was in 2001 or the end of 2000, the library, Northumberland County Library, was disbanded, or however the words would be. And that was when Trent Hills, they worked on, the municipality became those 3 libraries.
Yeah, Shirley, you had your hand up. Can I?
I was just going to say that I remember, I'm pretty sure the year before we all dispersed into different amalgamations, Campbellford left.
Yes, they had, yeah.
They wanted to be on their own. Once
Mhm.
amalgamation took place a year later, a year or so, that's when Hastings, Warkworth, and Campbellford joined as Trent Hills.
Right.
But Campbellford had all gone out on their own.
Yes. So we were a year on with 7 libraries at the end. We had 7 without Campbellford and without
Was it Wooler?
Wooler.
Wooler.
Yeah.
So then
Murray
it must have
Township.
pretty much, so then 2001 amalgamation, and then it was pretty much
That's right.
right
And
after that the 3 libraries joined.
Yeah. That's when the head office, we were in Coburg. Brianne had been a student with, she worked on our summer programs that went around to all the branches. And we used to, we would hitch rides together on the way down to Coburg. And we had our, and Joanne worked in the head office as well, and Shirley worked in the head office as well. So there was always those extra things. But that was the reason I left the area, was because of the Northumberland County Library closing. And so I ended up with Wellington County Library, where I ended up down here in Fergus. Yeah. So
One thing I would love to touch on too, that's so interesting to learn about, is just how the technology that we use in the library has changed in those 60 years. I wonder, Joanne, would you be willing to tell us a little bit about sort of what your day looked like as a librarian in the era that you worked, and what, you know?
Okay, yep. We had the card catalog, and so we bought all our own books. We'd go to the book fairs, and Judy would sometimes come with me, and then we would choose what books we wanted, and then they would catalog and process them ourselves. The barcoding didn't come in until a few years later, but basically it was with the card catalog. Sometimes to get some of the people using it a bit better, we would have a contest, and we would just type out a lot of questions, and they'd have to go to the catalog to find out the answers, and then there would be there'd be a prize for would put their names in for a door prize or something, and the merchants would have donated a prize, and so that encouraged people to use the card catalog and to get used to it before the computers came in.
So there was a barcode though while there was still card catalog.
there
was
was sorry.
Sorry,
Go
what
ahead, Joanne.
was it?
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
Joanne. So sorry, you described there being a barcode, but there still being the card catalog?
Well, yes, at first when they were barcoding, but this was at the very beginning. They had to barcode all the books, so it was dual. We didn't have the computers or anything then, but they were just in the process of doing the barcodes.
Everything was written down, wasn't it, Joanne?
Yeah.
It was, yep. Yeah, it was all written down. That's right, Anne. Yeah.
And Shirley, I found a newspaper article with you holding up the new plastic library cards and talking about sort of automation. Did that happen then during your time or was that just going from a paper card to a plastic card?
Gosh, I I don't really,
remember.
I remember that I remember the very first Bill Gates computer we got for the public.
Mhm.
That
That
was
was
so exciting.
across the county, you guys all got new computers from Bill Gates, yes.
And at that time, the municipal office had closed and we're over back in Campbellford. So that room behind the library was empty. So that's where the Bill Gates computer went for a long time. And then it got moved to where the community care is at the moment. It didn't stay there too long. And then eventually we got more computers. But that first one was quite amazing and people were just half excited and half scared, I think, to even try it.
That was
As
like
we
a
were,
public access computer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can't remember exactly when we got the computers for the books. I would imagine is once the barcode was all done.
Hmm.
yeah, once we did that through the county system, we had them all, everybody, a lot of the branches got volunteers. I remember my mom being one of the volunteers coming up to having to go from the card catalog, picking the card out, finding the book, making sure you put the right barcode on that book so it wasn't volume 2 of something. You had to make sure you double checked things, and they had their I'm trying to think if you had scanners right away.
No.
I believe you had something that you could read the barcode, but by the time we had the internet had just started to come in, right? So the sell of the library, of the computers at the library, was the fact that we had a CD-ROM. Do you remember the CD-ROMs, ladies, where you could put the encyclopedia in and they could look up whatever from just with the subject or whatever, whereas we are having to think, oh, what are we going to look under? Oh, Canada history, that's a big section in the catalog. So, to have it where you could get actually a different subject, and that would be all kinds of things, prime ministers or indigenous history or whatever you were looking for, you could find it, of course, better once we got on computers. But
Brianne, you were telling me a little bit as a volunteer, you remembered having a bit of a system that you had to administer for, but that was for the books, right?
Yes, I think if we were talking about the cards and that, I was saying I would of course volunteer on a Friday night. So Fridays were usually fairly busy. So I would start really early. We would have to take all of the cards from the books and stamp them all and put them in alphabetical order. So I'd have we'd have the whole desk lined up and put them in order and stamp all the cards for the next day. So it could be quite time consuming depending how busy you had been. And I think I had written down, so I was trying to remember before when we went from the card catalog to the database. And I think it was about 2008. And that's when we first, so that we had the barcodes then, but we went to new barcodes. That's when patrons got a plastic card. That's when we stopped writing everything down and stamping. So we got the scanners and we had the Mandarin database, and we were, I think, one of the last libraries to maybe get on that bandwagon. I'm not sure, but I think we were, but yeah, it was a process, and you were there for that too. But yeah, I think it was about 2008 or 9, right around
Yeah, I
there.
think you're right, Brianne. I'm actually going to show you, I'm in front of this display that I've made, and I don't know if you can see. See that. Can you see that picture? There's a picture anyways of Shirley holding up a library card, and it talks about it being automated. Shirley gave me some great binders just full of newspaper clippings, and it's been such a wonderful resource to look through. That's great. So I mean, yeah, Shirley.
I was just going to say, with Brianne talking about the cards, I can remember, sometimes it would take a good part of the evening and I might be there half an hour after the time we were to have closed, just getting all these cards stamped and in order,
Nice.
the new due cards for the next day. It was very time consuming.
you know how hard it was to
There's
explain
no
to
such thing as going home on time then.
No, You don't know how hard it is to explain to a board that they need an extra half hour at the end of closing to clean up. It was like, no, you start at this time and you end at that time, and the other time is just kind of fun time. We did a lot of volunteers.
Part of my sort of learning about the history of the library too, I really have seen how labor intensive just the maintenance of the book lending side of things was. And during Shirley's time here, she established a really strong Friends of the Library group, which I'd like to talk a little bit about now. So I think Joanne mentioned some volunteers helping with the move from Front Street to the Civic Centre as well. But I'm wondering a little bit about the role that volunteers have played in the library over the years. I think during a time, especially when just the book maintenance took librarians a lot of time. And as you've all said, that, you know, after hours time as well. But the move, it seems, over the years has been to encourage us to do a lot more programming. And from my position now, programming is a big part of the expectations of me and what I do in my job. And I think, you know, the automation has made that book side of things take a little bit less time. Although Val might disagree, that's certainly still a huge part of Val's day, is managing all the books in and out. And
that's what I enjoy. That's what I enjoy, is the book aspect. So we work well as a team, don't we, Jenny?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
do. But Shirley, from your memories, were you the librarian when the Friends of the Library group started, or did that begin earlier?
I worked there, but it was actually Anne that restarted the Friends of the Library. And it just took off from there. We were a little, I don't know whether we felt a little hesitant at first about whether we'd get enough members and all that, but it was quite surprising the support we got in the community. And I think we became a very close-knit group and, enjoyed getting together, as well as doing a lot to promote the library and support different programming and that was a lot of fun. I'm kind of sorry to see with COVID that we haven't been able to meet for a while, but I certainly hope when we are able to that a lot of those people will still be interested in being part of the group. When you talk to volunteers, and I know Anne will remember too, the two that I remember the most, because they always helped Anne with all the video and large print rotations, I think, was Nancy Ben and Joan West. So Anne might talk to them.
Very important. Those two regularly every week they volunteered.
And what would they do?
Other volunteers, seeing as we're talking about them with respect to our friends, Marion Norman, remember her? She was the one to push for this Friends of the Library, and Sky, of course, became very involved and wanted this Friends of the Library. I was a little hesitant at first because I thought it would take a whole lot more time and effort to get it organized and moved, but like Shirley said, it actually went a lot smoother than I thought, and a lot more interest.
It's interesting you should say that, Anne, about Joan West was one of the people I had thought of too as being such a good volunteer. But also we had the first Friends of the Library, I guess, was before we were moving. And we had
yes.
Marion Norman was part of Friends of the Library then, and she was representing the seniors. And then we had a representative from the Legion and also the Lions. And that was to help with, with fundraising and for public awareness and so on. So it was good.
And they helped So just to recap, so the library started where the cenotaph is now, moved to what people now know as Jang's Chinese food restaurant on Front Street.
Yep.
And then Joanne, while you were head librarian, it moved from that location on Front Street up here to the Hastings Civic Centre. And you describe that as being quite the process. Can you tell us a little bit about that move? And you must have had to rely on volunteers a lot to make that happen as well.
We couldn't have done it without the volunteers, really, because there were about 10,000 books, and they all had to be packed up. And also we were going to a new space, but using the same bookcases that we had, but with the different layout. I had to measure up the linear footage of the bookcases to figure what would fit where. And then so that it would be easier once they were all in place, then we took the linear footage of each genre, and so of all the books, and then the curtains were labeled so that we knew which books were going to be in which bookcase. They were likely going to be in a different bookcase from the one that they were currently in. So there was quite a bit to do with that, and the volunteers were just fantastic. Actually, we were only closed for a week, so it was really something we could do that. And then the town crew did the moving, and they came with a pickup truck, and then they loaded up. They
were terrific.
Remember that? And then we stood on the back, well, whoever it was sat on the back, and they were riding up the hill to the new one, and so on. And it was, but really we couldn't have done it, without all the volunteers who we had. Yeah, it was.
Judy, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, when Joanne, you were talking about measuring the old shelves. Yep. Those old shelves were the actual original shelves that were built for the library that was on where the cenotaph is. And they were built by my mom's neighbor, Mr. Skinner, and they went from each library, like each new building, and the big brown ones, the big heavy ones, were from the Lindsay Public Library. I remember my mom getting those from there. But when they moved from the Cenotaph Library, the building that was over the raceway, they were only there for about 2 years, and then moved so we were on Front Street, where, is it Jang's, you said?
Yes.
The Chinese restaurant. We were there for quite a few years but I remember when they moved there, Mr. Humphreys, who had the grocery store downtown, he gave Mom a grocery cart, a free grocery cart. That was for her, so when the books came in, she could move them around the library and put them, so she wouldn't have to carry them and walk them. But originally, Mom said that they borrowed quite a few of the carts and actually pushed the books down to the new library, as well as somebody's pickup truck. But Mom said she got lots of exercise those days, getting those books from one place to the other. So now, if there is still a grocery cart there, that was Mr. Humphreys who gave that to the library.
I'm glad we didn't have to do that when we moved up the hill.
No.
Oh, yeah. So right behind if you can see where Val's sitting, right behind her there, those are those still original bookshelves that you're talking about, Judy.
That's right. They are. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty interesting.
So they're 60 years old. They're definitely 60 years old. Yeah. He came in and he had them all so that they would be fitting in on the wall space. And we had that junior pictured section, and it had the slatted, it had so that you could put the picture books on it. It had I'm losing my words,
like a sloped kind of.
Yeah, sloped. And I don't know if that's still there, but that was from the original library as well. So if those shelves could talk, they would have quite a story to tell.
I
Yeah.
remember when we moved up here, Joanna, because you'll remember this too, but moving those large bookshelves into this library, the guys had to take the tops off because they wouldn't, you know, they were so big and sturdy, they wouldn't fit through the door.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
We said we
talking about the carrying on from Joanne, that Joanne did a wonderful job on all this, organizing volunteers and organizing the removal of the from Front Street up to here.
Oh, thank you, Anne.
I can remember the day we moved. It had to be in the high 20s. My t-shirt was sticking to me all day. And you talk about this truck and the two guys, Alex and Morgan and Hap too, moving. They all helped move these books. I used to ride up the hill in the truck just to get some air. It was so hot.
Funny.
That's a great memory. So I want to also, I don't want to keep us too much longer, but I do want to just hear a little bit about patrons. And I know it's, you know, without naming names, or it's a small community, and but I'd love to just hear a little bit about some of your memories of people that in Hastings that have used the library. I know, Val, would you are sort of, I would say, the face of the library right now, and do so much work one-on-one with people when they come to the library and helping them find books in particular. And without naming names, who can you tell us like a bit of like who would you say are our patrons today? Like who would you say uses the library the most today from your perspective?
Well, I think that if you're thinking about Reader's Advisory, I think they're mostly people who have retired. They've lived in Hastings most of their life and they are now retired. Although when I say that they're seniors, there's really a cross section of people that you know, like the Reader's Advisory aspect. So it's so interesting, the different personalities, and it's lovely when you recommend a different author. You know they're looking for a different author, but when you recommend someone and it's a success, you know, it's real job satisfaction, and it's something I really enjoy. So.
And you and I too. I mean, I since I've just been here, people come to the library obviously for books.
Yes.
We also have a lot of people that come regularly to use the computers.
Yes.
And I always love seeing those people that have the library built into their routine. So, you know, we have someone who's passionate about astronomy, and every Friday we can be sure to see him at the library to do some printing and some computer use to engage in his passion. And children who, you know, grandma brings them to the library every Tuesday morning, or seeing those routines that people build in.
I've seen just in 11 years I've been here, I've seen little toddlers grow up to be teenagers and older, and they're still coming here. Or because of COVID, we haven't seen them for a while. And then somebody came back last week and I recognized her, and I remember when she was in a stroller, you know, now she's reading adult books. It's
that's Brienne for us.
When you've been around as long as I would, you'd see them as small kids, and then you'd see them as mothers themselves.
Yes.
And then I again, without naming names, Val, you'll know who I'm talking about. People that come, we have one patron in particular that he says he rents movies and watches movies, but I think he just comes in to joke around with us. And every time he comes to the library, he has a different accent that he puts on, and he makes us laugh. It's always, we look forward to his visits every week.
And I think the last few years have been tough on a lot of people. They've been very isolated, and I think they look forward to coming in and having a chat, and then you introduce them to new DVDs, new books, and Yes,
Yeah,
but
there's a
it's a
social-
it's a
yeah.
social aspect of their lives, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Does that
I
sound,
agree with you, Val. Yes, this library was never a hush-hush place at all. It was some very interesting conversations going on over the years. It was a fun place to be.
Yeah,
I
it
remember
was
one, go
center.
ahead.
No,
Go
I
ahead.
said it was just the center of the community, the hub. And I found that moving away from Hastings, I found that in any library, it is certainly the hub of a community where for social reasons as well as fun, you know, and reading, and it's serious stuff. But yeah, everybody, you have all those special patrons that certain, you know, when that book comes in, that's for her.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, you think,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
Joanne Carlin would love this book, or Shirley would like this mystery. Yeah.
I remember, you know, the time that we were there, that the Hastings Public Library or Hastings Public School were renovating their library. And so they asked if they could bring the classes to, you know, to the Hastings Public Library to get their books. And, but the teachers didn't want to be responsible for the books that these kids would choose. So they came in, and so there'd be like 20, 25 kids at a time, and they joined. And then they were coming for a few months, it seems to me, but it was lovely to see 25 kids coming in the door and you know, and choosing their books, but then you had to follow up, you know, and all that, and it was a very, very busy time. But I remember the families would come in together, the mother and father and the kids, and yeah, we had a lot of younger ones coming in as well as seniors and so on. But
yeah, Judy?
Speaking of what Joanne is saying, I remember when my mom was there, we had a separate school, a Catholic school in Hastings, St. Teresa's. Separate school was up where the seniors residence is, or the seniors apartments is on Victoria Street. And I remember because the library hours at that time probably were up to 10 hours, and I think they were open 2 hours on Saturday morning. Mrs. Barber, Julie Barber, I remember Mom talking about Julie because my son Todd had her for JK and SK over at St. Paul's, and surely you would know Julie Barber, I'm sure.
Well, yeah.
And
Yes,
she was teaching in Hastings at the time at St. Teresa's, and she would bring her class. And I think that was Mom really looked forward to seeing those kids, and they would take their books out. And I don't know who was responsible for them, but they were happy to have them. But they would come every week to the library, so they were. And when they put the school library in, of course, that they thought that was going to do something to our part of the count or the community, but it didn't. We were still busy and going on from there. Yeah.
Brianne?
Oh, I was just wanted to chime in, just talking about the kids coming from the schools and just all the children in the library. And I think we've all here ran story time one time or another, and that's part of my job right now as well. And it's just so funny. The other day I saw a child that I've had in my story time, and they're so excited to come and to see you, and then to see them outside of the library when you run into them in the community, they just are like a deer in headlights. Like, how are you? You don't live at the library, you're out here, what are you? So you feel kind of, I don't know, kind of famous almost, like they're just stargaze, they can't picture you anywhere else. So
That's right. I had a child who was shopping with his mom in the grocery store and recognized me and said, Mom, there's the lady that lives in the library.
Sometimes you feel you do live in the library, right? But it's always home. To me, the library's always been home.
I agree.
Well, on that note, that's a nice way to close things off, Judy. And I just want to again thank all of you so much for joining me today and sharing these memories. It's pretty special that we have all these faces around the screen, and it's 60 years is a pretty huge accomplishment. And I really see how the library here in Hastings has is what it is today because of a lot of hard work and dedication from people like you throughout the years. So thank you all very much. And there's a few faces that we don't have around the screen that also really contributed to the library as well. But and thanks to them. But yes, thank you all very much for joining me today. I really appreciate hearing your stories.
No, you're
Happy
welcome.
Library Week.
Yeah.
Have fun.
It is wonderful to see you all. It is, especially you, Joanne and Judy. I haven't seen you for so long.
I know.
It's
Have to
been a
meet.
joy.
We'll have to have remember we used to have lots of library parties and dinners, and when we had our we'd have Christmas dinner together or a staff meeting and luncheon and stuff. So it would be fun to get together.
Need a reunion.
Yeah.
For that. Sounds good.